The Mysterious KWG type that for the longest time was supposed to be the longtime counterpart to Arcbeetle, but made his debut in Medarot 8. It is KWGXX Maquette, with a kit of radar sight, microwave, hammer, biped legs, and the leg ability of artillery, which buffs the success and power of shooting-based skills, but also leaves him unable to dodge or defend while in his heat phase prepping the skill. Now, as mentioned, it is definitely very nice to see this strange KWG type make his grand debut into the mainstream titles once again, alongside his debut from Medarot 8 onwards. Radar sight, of course, we have seen it before, and it's pretty standard among most KWG types. It is a standard support space skill that raises success of all allies by 30%, but also debuffs and removes any conceal or stealth effects of the enemy side. So, always a great support skill you could generally never go wrong with, but probably not the greatest, of course, when compared to things like field control or especially something like Dominion, especially in that case. Microwave, however, is a brand new skill to the game, as it has a number of factors to it which actually all contribute to it being very potentially one of the most powerful shooting based skills in the game. It has the ignore defense mechanic just as Ghost and Ghost Shot do, but it also has a damage bonus that scales on your Metaforce charge, similar to Laser and Hyper Beam. However, it scales much like Charge Blade and Charge Buster do instead, but it scales up to times 200% of your current charge depending on the part rank, without the drawback of having to actually eat the charge in order to do it. However, the drawback to it essentially is that after use of the microwave skill, the arm self-destructs and breaks, much like Sacrifice does. So it does have a lot of really high points for its high base power and its high damage multipliers, of course at the cost of the Sacrifice drawback. But that actually works to his advantage, because if you go back and read it over again, it operates like Sacrifice, but its damage bonus scales on charge. So basically this means even after the arm breaks the first time, and you have it restored back with with Restore or All Restore, and even bring it back at 10% of HP, it's still going to be firing off at that highest damage bonus it left at when you first used it. So this is going to be a very high power shooting attack for sure. It will of course be a little bit of a stall skill more or less. Some people would maybe think of it as like maybe Hyper Beam with extra steps involved, but honestly I am very interested in seeing if the damage bonuses and the potential damage output that Maquette can clock will indeed stack up once he does officially go live. Hammer, of course, is a standard melee skill that's an AoE, so it will hit all 4 parts on the target at once. Artillery legs honestly are pretty solid for it as well, especially geared toward him using that shooting arm as his primary form of combat. Unfortunately, across the board, it does look like he is designed in particular to be a glass cannon. His head only clocking about 3,000 HP, the right arm at about 3,240, about 3,250, left arm just barely 2,750 at that, and the legs also pretty much the same as the right arm at about 3,250. So he does have some pretty solid armor, but then if you look at his legs, his melee resist is definitely there for sure. So if he's taking a blow from an incoming melee attack, he should be relatively fine. But of course, that low shoot resist, the low evade, and especially the low mobility on top of that does kind of hint toward the fact that he's not going to be going anywhere particularly quickly, and he will have a little bit of a weakness towards shooter-based nukers. However, across the board, as a pure set, because of his particularly strange build, I'd even say even qualifies for the all-rounder leg ability if you decide to complement with that instead. As a pure set, I would rank him about a 6 out of 10. Again, not to say that he's bad or has bad numbers. He has, like I keep mentioning, probably one of the highest potential damage outputs in the game of a shooting attack, but the issue with it is that it is a Metaforce-reliant skill, and unfortunately on his build, he does not have that Metaforce sustain on him. And on top of that, Microwave is a one-and-done skill, which means after you use it, it breaks. So in order for you to use it again, you need to have someone else in the party that's willing to cover for him to have it restored. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the artillery leg ability does actually work to his advantage with the microwave for extra power, but it does leave him wide open. So it's absolutely imperative for him to make sure he hits the line first, or have someone protect him if he wants to make use of the microwave cannon, or any of his skills rather, efficiently without being absolutely punished for it, which does kind of hurt him just a little bit. As mixed parts, however, I would rate him just a little higher at a 6.5, maybe even a 7 out of 10 in some cases, depending on how you choose to use him. As I said, unfortunately, his legs do comp for that extra power at the cost of him being wide open in his heat phase, and him not being very fast at just barely 641 for that cap mobility at 5-star, means he's not going to be the fastest on the field, unfortunately. However, it does go back to a hint I mentioned earlier. If you choose to use him maybe as a semi-mixed set, more or less, you can still use his head and arms relatively feasibly, but then maybe pair it off with someone who has all-rounder as a leg ability, because that actually would fit into this very, very nicely. So he has a much faster speed boost and can maybe hold his own a little better, I'd say, than before, without having to rely on someone else or having that wide open draw, that no defend drawback anytime in heat phase. Of course, however, it still does kind of tie into the fact that he has no Metaphor Sustain, which is something that's required for him in order to use the microwave cannon at its highest potential. So maybe if you were to use it another way, you could probably pair it off with maybe Cross's Head for that 1-2, much like you would maybe Ghost Shot, or Hyper Beam, or anything of the like, very easily. But just know and just bear in mind that with that, you would actually need to pair that off with someone who has Restore or First Aid, or someone who can restore broken parts. You can use it more than once without it being a one-and-done trick.